Grab a cup of coffee and start your day with Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Visit cyacyl.com. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast, and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. For 4 years, Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has been bringing you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thanks for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Today's guest, Guy Finley, was raised among the Hollywood elite and realized years ago that there was more to life than wealth and fame. Guy is the author of The Seeker, The Search, and The Sacred, and more than 40 other books and audio programs that have sold over 1 million copies and are in 18 languages worldwide. In addition, he has been a guest on television and radio shows, including national appearances on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and NPR. Good morning, Guy. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Joan. Good morning to you.
Guy, your career, it started out in a very different direction than where it is now. You're the son of late-night TV and radio pioneer Larry Finley, and your friends were the sons and daughters of famous celebrities. You composed music for artists such as Diana Ross and Debbie Boone, the Jackson 5, Billy Preston, and the Four Seasons, and you wrote scores for motion pictures and TV shows. By most people's definition, you were successful. So what is it that happened? What made you make such a dramatic change in your life, and why weren't you fulfilled?
Well, I think the short answer is that successful for me meant more than just having a house in Malibu and a tennis court, and the accolades of my peers. Success for me began to slowly but surely mean to be able to go into a high-profile meeting without fear, to be able to perform without anxiety, to be able to talk to individuals without compromising myself for the sake of their approval. It just changed for me. But in truth, it was something that started at an early age because, as you said, I was raised in a successful show business family. My running mates as a boy were the children of the Arnezes and the Sinatras and the Martins. And I remember distinctly as a young boy thinking to myself, these are not happy people. And yet, thrown into a set of social circumstances where you're told that you as a young boy, you have the penultimate in terms of possibilities for happiness. So these great big disconnects in my life, Joan, that gradually sorted themselves out actually through my music, because I always was writing about these bigger questions. And then slowly but surely, I had to give up the music business. I wasn't happy. And I traveled. I went around the world looking for someone, a man, a woman, anybody that could help me resolve these impossible contradictions. How come you can get something, and the minute you get it, you want something else? Mm-hmm. Where does the race end, and what's the purpose of the race? All of us feel that. To one degree or another, we recognize that there is a discontent that is sewn into the fabric of our being, and that it doesn't matter what we get or who says what about us, but eventually the thrill wears off, and we're once again on that racetrack to nowhere. I wanted answers, and that's what happened to me as a young man.
Guy, I think you hit the nail on the head, because so many of us do experience the type of feelings that you just described, but fear holds us back. We're so afraid to make change in our life because of the unknown. So, and I know you've written a lot about the topic of fear. So when we have the types of feelings that you experienced, what is it that we need to do to put ourselves on the path or the journey of our life?
Be honest. It's really that simple. You see, one of the things, and as you said, I've been writing about this for 30 years, is that we believe that we are our own best friend, and we're not. There are parts of us that we have virtually no awareness of at all, that the minute we think to ourselves, my house is underwater, I may lose my job, or I'd like to get a new education in a field that I love instead of dragging myself through this nightmare every day, that the minute that we have a thought about making a dynamic, positive change in our life, based on the wish to fulfill a possibility that we've sensed lies dormant in us, these voices, parts of us will start saying, you can't, there's no way, you've got too much to do with what you've got going. And in basically creating this huge wave of negative energy that goes before us to make everything crooked. So that even if we want, with a small part of us, to make a change, we keep listening to something say maybe later, a little bit down the line. And why I said honesty is the key, is that if we're honest with ourselves, we see that all we do is just go further down the line and nothing changes. And lastly, really to the heart of my new book, The Secret, The Search, The Sacred, we really don't understand, Joan, that there exists something within us that wants us to succeed more than we can imagine success. And when we can align ourselves with a new understanding, not just about our possibilities, but everything that lines up, if we're willing to take the step into the fear, to prove to us that we're here to succeed as human beings, we can get that information and start working on it. We will change. And the world, by the way, would change with us.
Guy, where do we find that courage to face the inner negative part of us, the part that we tend to believe about ourselves? Where do we find that courage to get this honesty to face these challenges head on?
Have you ever had somebody really hurt you, Joan?
Yes.
All of us have. You know, been betrayed by a friend. I don't know if, for me, I remember as a boy, I was in my late teens, and we had just, my partners and I actually had just sold a Broadway musical to Universal Studios. It was going to, we were going to go off Broadway. And I remember finding out that my best friend, who we had given the power to negotiate for us, that he sold us down the river in order to get himself a producer's position. And I remember talking to him, and I remember him denying it, and I remember wanting to believe him. But then another 2 months goes by, and I realized that not only did that, but he did something else. Now, when I really see the clarity of the condition of my relationship with a man like that, do I need courage to part ways with him?
No.
The courage is in the clarity itself, isn't it?
Yes.
Think what a beautiful thing that is for us. Does it mean that I didn't hurt? No. Does it mean I wasn't afraid that I would lose out what I had imagined I'd get? No. But it did mean that the end of that relationship was absolutely inherent in the clarity of my recognition of what this person was and what he was doing. Now, listeners, make the jump with me. Something in us keeps telling us, you know what, you can, one more drink, one more cigarette, one more time going to with that group of people that you can't stand but that you hope to get something from. Fill in the blanks for yourself. One more day dreading what I'm doing because maybe it's going to change. And if we see it clearly, it isn't that we run around and dance on a lake like a ball of light, for joy, but we end the unhappiness because we realize, and this is a key point, it isn't new powers that we need in our lives. What we need to do is wake up and realize where we're making ourselves powerless. Because the instant that it's clear to us that we're participating with parts of ourselves that promise and promise but deliver nothing but more delay and more pain, we're done with that part of ourselves. And in that moment, Joan, the possibilities that were lying dormant but out of sight because we were too busy paying attention to this misguided set of beliefs, hopes, ideals, the minute that we cut bait, we have a new fish on the line.
And is that when we get to replace self-doubt with self-confidence?
Yes, because listen to this. I love the question. Because in that moment, and as it develops within us, and we see, you know what? Life has been bringing me and then fill in the blanks, 20, 30, 40 years, these lessons. I like to say that lessons ride in on the back of events. But I've been summarily rejecting the lesson because I've been resisting the conditions that they reveal. Then one day I finally realized there's, as the Borg would say, resistance is futile. And I go, oh my God, all this time I was being handed an invitation to discover something about myself that I couldn't discover in any other way, and I'd been rejecting it. Now I accept the invitation. I go through what I have to go through. Let's be clear about that. And I discover I'm a much better, more confident, complete human being. Not even because I did something new, but because I discovered a new possibility in my own nature. Then fear begins to disappear. I don't know if you know the scripture from John, perfect love casts out fear. Why? because fear is the negative child of resistance. You can't resist something without imagining it. So first there's resistance, then comes the fear. And as I stop resisting life and realize it's trying to give me what I need to fulfill myself, instead of stealing from me what I think I have, I'm on the right track to a completely different order of myself.
We are going to take a break for this week's Good Life Tips. Stay with us for information to help you make the positive life changes that we talk about on the show. When we return, I'm going to ask Guy the secret to letting go. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman, and our guest today is Guy Finley, author and director of Life of Learning Foundation. Guy, before break, I mentioned that I was going to ask you the secret to letting go, and I know that this is a question that you are often asked because you've written about this subject extensively, and you say that it's a very simple secret. What is it?
Well, the first one and the simplest is you have to see how much it hurts to hold on. You know, if you pick up a hot skillet, you don't go through some mental process of deciding whether you should set it down or where you should put it when you put it down. The body, its instinctive intelligence, drops the skillet immediately. But human beings, because we live in a mind that's really asleep to itself, we pick up that hot thought, that angry emotion, that bitter state, and when we pick it up, it hurts, but then our mind starts to try to rationalize why we have it and who is to blame for it. The most encouraging thing I can say to the listeners that really reveals that within each of us, regardless of where we are, what our traditions, our background, our religious beliefs, regardless of that, that which gave rise to all of that which we hold as being sacred, that beautiful wisdom, it resides within us all. And when we can be in relationship with this living love, this intelligence, we will know for a fact, without having to think about it, that there's no such thing as a moment greater than our ability to be positively changed by it.
Guy, I've also heard you say that going along with releasing the pain because something becomes too painful for us, that we need to accept that something better is coming to us than what it is that we've been asked to release. And
Yes.
and I do believe that, but I want to ask you, when you're going through something extremely traumatic, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, how can we really believe that there could be something better than the loss of this person or this relationship that we've had?
Well, look, and I understand, you know, we as a tendency of our nature is to ask the question that we fear the most or that we've been through that seem to be the most painful. I'm not saying there isn't grief. Gosh, I've lost friends that I've loved and had terrible pain. But the purpose, you see, if in fact, and I'll ask you as an advocate for the listeners, Joan, can the purpose of our life be to acquire possessions? Can that be the purpose of our life? Can it be to become someone who's so attached to something that I become not only fully dependent on it, but fearful so that I compromise myself to keep it? Can that be the purpose of my life? Life is not a race to win. It's not a place to acquire the best toys. It is a school for our spiritual education. Our life, the purpose of it is to discover in ever-deepening ways the truth of our relationship with the divine, whatever we may call that. And if we don't like the idea of the divine or God or Christ, then we can say the truth of our life, discovering how deep and broad run the possibilities of our nature that we don't know anything about, but still that's what we go into relationships for. We're looking to learn things about ourselves we can't learn in any other way. So here comes the loss of something immense. My mother, my father, my wife, my husband, my child, my home, my job. But if the purpose of my existence is to discover my relationship with what is timeless, because in the end, if I don't have a relationship with what's timeless, what good is all this stuff I've got? I can't take it with me. Then in that moment, I can realize, yes, this is painful. And even the loss of someone I love, I can't imagine anything more painful. But in such a moment, I can realize that what is being taken from me isn't being taken in a sense of a cruel act. It's part of the movement of life, and the only one by which I can become aware of the fact that my love for this individual is greater than his or her physical presence. The pain I feel is the proof that I thought all there was in terms of love was being near something that made me think of it. So that everything that happens to us, regardless, and this is my definition of a fearless life, to understand that whatever happens to us for the good of us, that there's a purpose behind it, and not one that we invent or that we rationalize or try to motivate ourselves through, but that we can be a participant in. The father takes away from the child the play horse. The child, no, I want to hold on to my horse. I like galloping. He says, but I want to give you a book on real horses, because even though you can't imagine it, you're going to have a real horse one day. So you have to give up the play horse for the real horse. We have to give up certain levels of our understanding, as real as they seem, to find out that within us live levels of understanding that are beyond the capacity of changes of life to put into conflict.
Guy, what are some tangible steps that you can offer our listeners in order to help them release their fears?
I think the first one, and maybe the most important, is we have to be willing to risk something, Joan. Something small. I'm not talking about big. Let's take a real simple example. You ever been late somewhere, Joan, and find yourself rushing?
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety promises me that if I go through this painful state, run over people, by the way, do things that hurt myself, and God only knows what as I'm rushing, that when I get to where I'm going, the anxiety will be over, I'll get my job done, and I won't be anxious anymore. That's pretty much the promise, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how many times am I going to listen to that friend, Joan? I mean, one day I have to realize that this anger that comes up with a disappointment, this impatience that lashes out, that these negative states keep coming back because I have never been introduced to that part of myself that produces it. Here's a really big idea. The moment does not produce that negative energy, it reveals it as always having been in us. The moment does not produce that disappointment, that discouragement, that grief. It awakens us to the fact that that possibility was lying dormant in us. To understand that means that I stop blaming and justifying my behavior. So there's the first small step, Joan, but it's a huge one. Never complain again as long as you live about anything, because what we're really complaining about when we complain is the fact that life has decided against my story, and my story is the story, so don't mess with me. We each have an individual story. Joan has one, Guy has one, each listener. We each come into this world. We have our traditions, our culture, our social values. We set out on a path. We make our discoveries. We create things. That's just the smaller story. The bigger story is that we are creations, that we are all the time being given a life that brings us into existence itself, beats our heart, allows us to breathe. And when this bigger story comes along and it says, Guy, Joan, I want to offer you something deeper and broader and better than what you presently have. All we know presently to do is go, no, this is what I know myself through. You know, I hate my job, but at least I get to do what I know will keep me in place. We're not here to be kept in place. We're here to continually discover our possibilities and in doing so, bring into relationship with the world around us and our friends, family, and loved ones the awareness that they have new possibilities too. So that as we change everything and everyone.
Guy, where can our listeners go to get more information about your books, your seminars, your work, and the Life of Learning Foundation?
Thank you for that, Joan. For information about my work, it's simple, guyfinley.org.
Guy, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Your wisdom is life-changing. It has given all of us so much food for thought, and I'm so happy that you were able to share it with us today.
It was my pleasure, Joan. But honestly, thank you for the opportunity, and let's speak again sometime, yes?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that this information is for educational purposes only and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, you can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, listen to past shows as podcasts, read a digital magazine, sign up for the mailing list, take part in the book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.